Hey everyone, this is Brano, and I recently watched a really good video from Nine Finger Games. And it is, I just kept crawling and it kept working, how I became a full-time indie developer. Now, I really like this video because it's a realistic depiction of what success looks like for what I would say most indie game developers that succeed, both in results but also in the execution and the process. And one of the reasons I really like this guy's video is that he describes himself as a sort of solo developer. And I really like this description because there are so many of these successful video games made by just one guy that really aren't made by just one guy. Though you could definitely describe them as sort of solo developers. It's sort of made by just one guy, but also not really. I think there's a lot of successful games that are more made by a sort of solo developer than not. And I think this should be a regular term that is used by more and more developers out there. And I think the reason why the term solo dev should be mostly abandoned is basically because there's no real consensus on how pure a solo dev needs to be in order to be a solo developer. Like, let's give out some hypotheticals. If you hire someone to do a part of your game, does that disqualify you from being a solo developer? That could be code, art, music, localization. It could be a voiceover, that type of thing. Like, does having any of that disqualify you from being a solo developer? Does buying pre-existing assets that you then just slot into your game, does that disqualify you from being a solo developer? Does using a pre-existing engine disqualify you from being a solo developer? And you could go into more bizarre hypotheticals like mining your own metal in order to smelt and create your own computer part. You could go crazy, but I think the point that needs to be made is that there's never going to be an agreement outside of 100% pure solo dev that you are a solo developer. Some people think if your name's in the credits, you contributed to the game. It's like, yeah, maybe not. Now, I really like the sort of solo developer term. And I think it's just a great term because it covers anything between like a 99% pure solo dev to a 51% pure solo dev. And because it has such a large range between like 99 to 51, it naturally leads you to talking about how everyone else contributed to your project without passively diminishing your own contributions. So I had a ton of people play test, report bugs, give me suggestions, and I want to make a big deal about that. And I want to say, hey, these guys helped me make my games. I had a volunteer make a couple of models for the world environment here and there. I want that person to say, like, yeah, they contributed to my game. I had one volunteer do a lot of work, which is a bunch of the dungeon textures and some of the dungeon music, and I want them to be highlighted as well. And I even teamed up with a person that did the 3D character models, like officially teamed up. And I really don't want to diminish what they did for the project. But I'm also can't really pretend that I didn't put in the vast majority of hours into making this game what it was. And this Healed to Death is very much my game. So I think that the sort of solo developer tag fits me well, and it just helps me find that right balance of being able to credit those who helped me make Healed to Death what it is, without me being in a team project where like one person does the majority of the work and then they have to share all the credit with everyone else. We've all been in those team projects. So I think you should use the sort of solo developer tag for yourself. If you have anyone else contribute to your project, it's a lot nicer, and it's also just like a lot more honest and a lot more freeing that if you do meet someone who wants to give you a small contribution to your game, I think it gives you permission to say, yeah, I can accept that because I'm already a sort of solo developer. You don't change my headcanon on how I'm making the game. Anyway, that's it for me. Bye.